I'm Jane McDow,
And Tom.
and we joined Westminster in January of 1973. Pretty much the reason we chose Westminster was because when we moved to town, we knew George and Sis Oldham and Rich and Ann Peniel, and they made us feel at home, and we didn't know anybody else in town. And we jumped in with both feet.
It's been a great place to raise our family and be nurtured in the faith. In 1968, two members of our church, Bobby and Carol Henderson, came to this session and explained that their son Brett had been struggling in public schools and private schools, and requested that if we provide a teacher, would you make a classroom available in the Sunday school building? And the session met that afternoon and voted affirmatively to make that space available. And Westminster Individualized Teaching Center, at that time as it was called, began with 7 students, and the next year it went to 14 students. In addition to Bobby and Carol Henderson, Ann Riley and Jack Miller came to the session a couple of years later and asked for it to be continued, and it grew from there to 21 students, and over the years to 200, a little over 200 students here in the Westminster space.
And that was too many in our space. And so that's when the Ingrams got involved and had a child, said they wanted to support the school and bought the property, and the school became Curry Ingram Academy, and it has a fabulous campus.
So after 25 years, John and Stephanie enabled, and others, the Westminster to be moved out to Williamson County, and they have developed that beautiful campus that's now called Curry Ingram Academy. And the administration building has a
Bell Tower.
A bell tower called the Westminster Bell Tower.
Well, they started with, I think, one room down in the lower part of the church under the parlor before we expanded all of that space. It was a small space. There were accordion walls, and it's where we had Sunday school on Sunday mornings, and where the classroom was then. And as more students came and more teachers, and a permanent director who was Barbara Gregg, who's now Barbara Gregg Phillips. She was the first long-term director of the school, and it started with, I think, one teacher and the 7 kids. And
one teacher named Leota McPherson was our first head of school, i.e. teacher. After Leota McPherson served as head of school for the first 2 years, we were able to get Barbara Gregg to serve in that capacity, and she did that for 10 years plus. And did a really remarkable job in getting it up and running and accredited, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, Barbara is a member of our church here, and we owe a big debt of gratitude to Barbara.
Okay. And we've had great directors, from Barbara getting everything started, to Beth Macklin, who followed her and was here for quite a while, and then later Kathy Rayburn, and now Jeff Mitchell is at Curry Ingram. Westminster School was started because there were church members who had a need for their child. The metro schools were not meeting their needs, the private schools were not, and they needed a place to educate their children, or their child. And so it didn't come from the church to offer a service to the community. It came from two families, basically, who had a need. And from there, other families learned about Westminster, well, what became Westminster School. And there was never any recruiting for students. It was because of the need, because Metro just did not provide for multiple learning differences.
So it's basically word of mouth is how the student population grew.
Well, I think Westminster is very special in recognizing needs. Sometimes the needs have to be brought to the church. Sometimes the church members see the need. But I think as we live out our faith, we just are presented with opportunities to spread God's love.
Well, I've been pleased at seeing how our church has been growing in mission these last 10, 15 years. We've always been active in supporting local nonprofits, but I've also seen us move into global mission, and I hope we'll continue to grow in both locally and globally.
I would like to thank all of those who were on the session back in '68 who said yes when they were asked to provide a space for a special school, because later, many years later, we had our son Thomas, and he needed a special school for children with learning differences, and Westminster was there and established and well recognized and appreciated in the community, and there was no question but that's where Thomas needed to go. And they gave him the tools to deal with education and with life, and he went on to a regular but a private high school, and then straight into college and ended up with his master's. And without Westminster School getting him started on the right track, I don't know what would have happened.
So we'll always be grateful to Westminster Church and Westminster School for making a big difference in our son's educational development.